the 3D view is going to activate the Z depth, and we'll be able to see things in three-dimensional perspective. So to do so, I would need to activate the 3D. So now you can see X, Y, and Z, right? So this is now in X, Y, and Z. If I hit C on the keyboard, you can see here it's going to be toggling between different modes, between rotation and panning and zooming. One thing that so many people make a confusion with is the zooming in the camera, which when you do, it actually maintains really good precise resolution, versus the scrolling up and down. So some people sometimes like, oh, I zoom in and it's really like low resolution. No, you're not zooming in, you're actually scaling up the canvas. So know the difference. After Effects has improved a lot the way the axes work, and now it's much easier to deal with rotation and all this. So that is wonderful. It used to be terrible. So they're giving more attention towards that, which is fantastic. That's nice. So now you can see here the pre-composition making that face is like made this way. So now it's gonna be a matter of rotating. So when I click now R for rotation, you can see X, Y, and Z. I'm gonna hit C on the keyboard always, regularly. And so I would be able to view things more easily. And I can zoom definitely, like using the scroll just to get a better look, so I don't have to kind of zoom in with the camera all the time. But I mentioned that example because a lot of people need to zoom in with the camera for, you know, higher resolution for final rendering, just to make that kind of difference. So what I'm gonna do now is to rotate it. I'm gonna hit V on the keyboard, so I would go into the select tool and I wanna rotate here, right? So you can see here the numbers of that rotation, which is really nice, fantastic. So I'm gonna, before I rotate it, I need to duplicate first, and then I'm going to go and rotate. So you would notice here that if I go to the rotation, you would notice that I got 90 degrees, and that's because when I did the rotation, I click and hold Shift, and that was snapping it. So you can see it's snapping to 45, and it's also snapping to 90 degrees. So that is wonderful. That is very helpful. It used to be really painful without these changes that they made. Okay, so now what I want to do is to duplicate this. I'm gonna click V and Control D. V to go to the select tool, and then Control D to actually take this and go here. I wish that they would make a way to snap on objects whatsoever, but that's still good. I'm pretty happy with the changes they made to the axes. That's nice. And I'm gonna select this one, Control D to duplicate, and then take it all the way there. So this is what I talked about when it comes to changing the background color of the pre-composition, because if you do have that vibrant green solid that's supposed to show you if there are gaps, it's not gonna be easy to keep that solid, especially in the three-dimensional perspective. That's why you could go to the Control K that I mentioned previously and change the entire background for the composition. So let's see here. This is good enough. I'm just gonna actually push this one instead, since this one was the main one, the original one. I'll just push it just a tiny bit. Okay. And it's probably safer to push further than leaving a gap. So, okay, so now it may look kind of three-dimensional, but it's not yet, because I still need to have that face to be duplicated and create this top and bottom. So to do so, I'm going to change the anchor point. So if I hit Y. So I'm gonna deselect and select this one, for instance. So if I hit V, that's the select tool that's gonna move this. But if I want to change the anchor point in 3D view, Y, and this here, changing the anchor point using these axes is also a big improvement that they made. So that's pretty awesome. And now I can simply just go here and view things from like this perspective, just to ensure that the anchor point is exactly on the corner. Okay, so now with that set, I'm going to hit V on the keyboard and then Control D to duplicate, and then go into the X axis and then rotate, and then hit Shift, snapping to 45, and then moving again, snapping to 90, and then Control D to duplicate, and then take it all the way down, and I can zoom in here. V on the keyboard, and there it is, it's covering it properly. Okay, so with that, now I technically have a three-dimensional cube. Okay, so all of this is in this wonderful three-dimensional world. What I need now is to take all of these pre-compositions and then pre-compose them, so it would be easier to move around. Or instead I can use a null object as well, either way. But let's just pre-compose, Control-Shift-C. Okay, so you would notice here that, hey, I had a perfectly three-dimensional cube. What's going on? The reason why suddenly we went into a two-dimensional perspective is that this pre-composition is not actually with an activated 3D. So click here. Now it shows in 3D. But guess what? It's kind of really looking messed up and scary. Like, oh my god, all my work is gone. Like, what's going on? So this is the beautiful problem that I mentioned that I want to introduce you to. That is going to come in later. And this is a very important thing to know, especially for people who love Illustrator, for instance. So what I'm going to introduce you to is this thing here. It's called Rasterize. Rasterize is going to allow you to either collapse objects. So in this case here, it would do this. Oh my god, this is amazing, right? This is amazing, right? For a 2D software, this is fabulous, because now we can pretty much do this. It's actually a 3D cube. So back to the point here, the other use of this is that when you have Illustrator images or vector images, when you zoom in on them, they would look pixelated when they shouldn't be. But if you do have, which is not the case here, these are made with pixels. But when you have that activated, if you're using vector pieces, it would be as precise as Illustrator would show it. Okay, so with that said, this is my exercise for making a 3D cube in After Effects. But the reason why I decided to make this exercise is because it really exposes beginners in After Effects to a lot of stuff in a way that it really helps them on putting things in the precise use of what they are meant for. And lastly, what I want to show you here is gonna hit C and then C again, and then zoom in with the camera and then rotate. What I want to do here is to go effects, glow. I'm gonna take that glow and apply it on, right? And I'm gonna change the radius. Look at that, wonderful. And you can also change the animation on that glow in a way that you make it like pulse, or die, or pulse. Let's hit N and see this previewed. It's very subtle, but also you can do a lot of really interesting things with it, with the glow. Another thing you can definitely do also is duplicate this whole thing, and then you would change the color of the glow if you want, or if you want you can change the maybe you can actually let's try this. You can try fill, okay, and now you have this cube and you have this cube, right? And you can change the attributes of the fill and all this, but also more interestingly, you can change the blending modes of the cube here. So I want to also talk about another shortcut to learn that is really important, is that if you want to flip-flop or change the blending modes, you can click and hold shift and then plus. Now look at this. I have no idea what this is, but it looks pretty awesome, right? This is pretty cool, and you can do so much with it, like meaning that you can change colors, you can have an added glow and all this. You can even nest more of those cubes. So let's keep testing. This is looking really cool. Okay, so I'm probably gonna personally go with this one. So my next experiment would be hit T to go to the opacity and see if I were to change the opacity a little bit, it would make drastic differences, right? So I'm gonna take it all the way up or all the way down, then key. Actually, I'm gonna go to the beginning of the timeline, hit home, and then key, and then 10 frames forward. Gonna take this all the way up, and 10 frames or 2 frames or 20 frames down further, and then on and on, and let's see what happens. So this is a pretty interesting result. Lastly, I want to throw one more thing here, is that you can try, instead of fill, you can try maybe tritone, give it like different colors and whatsoever, but you got the gist. I think it's pretty clear now what is the extent of the way I nested these effects, and also the cool factor that we have a functionally three-dimensional thingy here in a 2D software, which is just wonderful. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this, and let me know if there's something in particular that you would like to be covered more, if there's anything that wasn't clear. So yeah, thanks for watching, and for those who followed up, I hope this was fun.